The third kind of definition is precising. Now, in contrast with lexical, the aim of precising definition is to reduce the vagueness of the word. Whereas, if we're going to compare this with lexical, the aim of lexical definition is to reduce the ambiguity of a term, of a word. Now, if you still remember the meaning of vagueness, vagueness demands, again, ang keyword or technique that we did regarding vagueness is the syllable relating to the word vague. Since vague only has one syllable, in other words, it lacks something. Dun sa ambiguity or ambiguous, it has two syllables. So, ibig sabihin, we have the word and then we have the context. For vague, since it only has one syllable, it demands the other syllable na missing here compared with ambiguity is the context. Alright? Yun yung technique that I've mentioned in my previous lectures. So when we say vagueness, precising and vagueness, ang vagueness dito, it lacks a certain context. Alright? Example, legislation gives financial assistance to the poor. Alin dito yung vague? Legislation pertains to the ability of the Congress to create law, a certain law. So, financial assistance, madali yan. When you say financial assistance, you're going to aid someone using your finances. Okay, ibig sabihin, it pertains all about the money. So, mga lawmakers, magbibigay daw ng assistance na pera sa mga mahihirap. So, ang missing na lang dito, most likely is the poor. Now, when we say poor, it needs to be precise. Anong ibig sabihin ng precise? Dapat eksakto or more specific. When we say poor, in this example, ano bang ibig sabihin nun? Poor in this case, paano natin masasabi ang isang tao ay mahirap? It needs a precising definition. Definition of what? Definition that would specify exactly who is poor and who is not. So if we say poor, ano ba ang pamantayan or criteria or standard for someone to be poor? If I am a lawmaker, it has to be indicated in my law that a poor, in order for the poor to receive financial assistance, dapat pasok siya sa criteria ng gagawin namin in order for us to be specific and then precise. Otherwise, kasi ang problema, may mga mahihirap na nakaka-afford mag-aircon. Tulad nito. May mga mahihirap naman na nakaka-afford magkaroon ng signal satellite. So, mahirap ba talaga sila o nakatira lang talaga dito sila sa sa area na to? So, in order for you to be categorized to be poor, dapat malinaw, it's exact, it's specific that your yearly income or annual income should be less than 60,000. So when we say yearly income of 60,000 pesos, it means almost less than 5,000 pesos a month for you to be considered as poor. And then if you fall under that criteria or standard, you will receive financial assistance. Okay, so ibig sabihin, under precising definition, it lacks a certain context or applicability. Ano bang setting natin ng pagiging mahirap? That's the meaning of context. Okay? For lexical, meron na tayong malabong salita at meron din tayong malabong konteksto. That's the difference between lexical and then precising. Kasi for lexical, it's more on ambiguous word. For precising, it's more on vagueness of the word. Punta tayo sa fourth. Fourth definition is theoretical. Now, for theoretical, the definiendum. Okay, tingnan natin yung definiendum. Is the definiendum a product of science? If it's a product of science, it requires a theoretical definience. So, when we say theoretical definience, it requires a certain investigation and experimentation. So, yung definience dito, assigns a meaning to a word by suggesting a theory that gives a certain characterization to the entities that the term denotes. So meaning to say, if I'm going to propose a definition for a specific definiendum here, it has to undergo a certain experimentation and then investigation. Kasi nga, ang theoretical definition is more on interpreting a certain phenomenon utilized by science. Okay, yun ang definition for theoretical definition. Now, for instance, ano ba ang website? How does a website work? Ang website is a group of interlink. So it's the word website acquired its definiendum dito sa dito sa particular experience na to, yung web ng spider. Kasi sabi dito, in order for the definiendum fit its definiens, interlink and well-structured web pages that exist on the same domain is called website. A website can contain single or 1,000 pages. Ang kinuha natin ditong keyword is the interlink. Okay, ibig sabihin, magkakakonekta lahat to ng mga linya na yan. Yung mga linya na yan dito sa web na to, they are interlinked because of this specific source. So, that's how a website works. So, lahat yan magkakakonekta. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng website. So, we have to test this if this is correct. Otherwise, if this is not, if we found out a different result from our experimentation, hindi mag-fit yung definiens dun sa definiendum natin. Okay, so ibig sabihin yung definiens, yung pag-i-interlink ng mga web pages, which is now called your website, has undergone a series of investigation and experimentation. Now, ang science na makakagawa nito. Kaya ang theoretical is more related to science. Okay, example, light as a form of electromagnetic radiation. So, ibig sabihin, ang light, which is your definiendum, is a product of science. Now, we have to test whether the definiens, i-test natin ngayon ang definiens ng light if it requires a certain investigation or experimentation. So, ang electromagnetic radiation results from a lot of causes. So, pwedeng sa radio, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet from the sun, X-rays, and then gamma rays. So, lahat to titestingin natin para yung electromagnetic radiation na definiens is exclusive lang for light. So, it makes things able to be seen. Otherwise, if we're not going to test this definiens that would fit the definiendum, yung description that is only exclusive for light would also fall for other definiendum like the radio, microwaves, ultraviolet, and then X-rays, and then gamma rays. Okay, ang keyword again natin for theoretical is the definiendum is a result of science. And then the definiens needs to undergo a series of experimentation to justify the definiendum. Okay, and the last kind of definition natin is persuasive. So, ang persuasive, ang keyword natin dito is to convince someone using emotive language. So, yung definiens natin is filled with emotive language to evoke feelings from the audience. Kasi, most of the argument na convincing argument uses emotive argument. Kasi, ang objective ng emotive argument is to acquire, to persuade, to convince you using your emotions, to capitalize and exploit on your emotions. If you're able to convince and exploit your emotions, madali ka nang mag-conform and then mag-submit dun sa intention ng definiens found in a definiendum ng persuasive definition. So we say, do we have, let's say for instance, do we have to legalize abortion? Yes or no? Now, in order for you to be convinced not to legalize abortion, I'm going to use emotionally charged definiens by capitalizing on your emotions. So, kung madali ka ma-convince using my emotive language, most likely even without the facts, you will comply and conform or even submit to the intention of my argument. So let's check. We have two definitions for the definiendum ng abortion. Abortion means the ruthless murdering of innocent human beings. That's the definitions for the abortion. Now, tingnan natin yung next na definitions. Abortion means a safe and established surgical procedure whereby a woman is relieved of an unwanted burden. So, between the first argument and then the second argument, mas emotionally charged yung first sentence because of the word use, ruthless murdering. So, ang tanong, necessary ba yung paglagay ng ruthless murdering to define abortion? If it's not necessary, you're using emotionally charged definitions, it falls under persuasive definition. Kasi pwede mo naman tanggalin tong ruthless murdering to define what abortion is. Okay, let's provide another example. Ayun lang pala yung example. Again, ang keyword natin for persuasive, you try to convince your audience and then your readers using emotionally charged definitions. Ano yung definitions? Yun yung description about the definiendum. Yung pinag-uusapan natin. Here, ang definiendum natin is abortion. Ang definitions natin yung description. Right? Let's have a recap for the kinds of definition. We only have 5 kinds of definition. Stipulative, ito yung salitang kali. Yung bago. We have a new experience and then we try to assign a new term for that new experience. Okay? Ang example natin dito yung barnacle. Next, lexical. For lexical, andun yung letter A. It tries to reduce ambiguity of a specific term. So, ano yung ambiguity? Meron tayong term and then we have the context. Malabo tong term tsaka context. Okay, yung example na binigay natin dito is na nahabol yung hangin. Okay, yung tungkol sa hangin. And then we also discuss certain rules about lexical definition. For precising, it's all about vague terms to reduce the usage of vague terms. Ang example na binigay natin dito is yung mahirap. Paano mo ba masasabi na mahirap ang isang tao? You need to be precise, you need to be specific, you need to be exact, you need to provide certain standards or criteria. For theoretical, ang keyword natin dito is the definiendum is a keyword for, the definiendum is a product of science. So theoretical is more on science and then definitions, yung description, undergoes a certain series of experimentation to justify the definiendum. Okay, persuasive tayo. For persuasive, we try to use emotive language. Emotive language to convince your listener or your viewers. Okay, yun yung kinds of definition. Now, punta tayo ngayon sa techniques for definition. For extensional application na to, this becomes more specific na. We try to apply the extension of terms and then the idea of denotation to definition. For extensional denotative definition, we only have 3. These are demonstrative, enumerative, and then definitions by subclass. Ang pinagkaiba ng enumerative in contrast with subclass, yung subclass is closely or directly connected sa isang superclass. Ang enumerative, not necessarily, kasi the items enumerated or identified under enumerative definition can still exist even without the main concept. Later, i-discuss natin ano yung main concept na tinutukoy natin for enumerative definition. Ulitin natin, extensional denotative definition, we only have 3 techniques. So, extensional denotative definition indicating the members of the class that the definiendum denotes. This can suggest intentions but they cannot determine them. So, it's more on denotation. So, pag sinabi nating denotation, this is a physical extension. Next, punta tayo sa intentional connotative definition. So, intentional connotative definition is more on the qualities kasi nga connotative or connotation siya. Qualities of the physical extension of the extensional definition. So, we have 4 techniques under intentional definition. We have synonymous, etymological, operational, and then definition by genus and difference. Sa synonymous, sa Tagalog yung kaparehas. It's only one word. For etymological, this pertains to the historical cause. Etymological yung pinakaugat. Or how the certain term was acquired. Yun ibig sabihin ng etymological. So this refers to the old languages like Latin and Greek. Operational definition is this pertains to the how. Okay, it requires a certain action for the definition to be understood. For definition by genus and difference, this is, don't get confused dito sa subclass tsaka sa genus and then difference. For genus and then difference, you can only have a specific difference. This is in reference with the species which is under the genus. So, tatlong konsepto ang pinag-uusapan natin under definition of genus and then difference. Okay, later we will discuss about this. Punta tayo sa ostensive definition or demonstrative definition. Ang keyword natin for ostensive definition is this is non-verbal or non-linguistic. This is most primitive kasi we try to provide definitions to the definiendum using our actions. Okay, body language. Ostendere is a Latin word which means to show using using something. In this case, we are using our body language. So if a foreigner asks you, where is this specific place? If you use this one, if you demonstrate this action, if you show this action to that foreigner, this is an example of a non-linguistic action. If it's non-linguistic action, it's limited. The definitions is limited. That's why it falls under demonstrative ostensive definition. Okay, example. What's the meaning of the chair? Okay, this is the definiendum. If we're going to provide a definiens for the definiendum na chair, it means this and this and this as you point to a number of chair. When I say point, you're using your body language. If you use your body language without providing the appropriate description for the chair, without providing the appropriate qualities and properties of what a chair is, ibig sabihin hindi mo nabibigay na yung chair is is an object na pwede nating upuan. Ang pinapakita mo lang na definitions just you're pointing out, that's demonstrative ostensive definition. This is your body language or language through gesture. Or sa madaling salita, ito yung sign language. Okay, if we're going, ito yung sign language kasi we're using non-linguistic or non-verbal language. Example, you are my blank, my only blank. You make me blank when skies are blank. So, ano yung blank? This is your non-linguistic, non-verbal definitions. Okay, so ibig sabihin din demonstrate mo using non-verbal definitions. You'll never know blank how much I blank you. Please don't take my blank away. Next is enumerative definition. This is the concept that I've mentioned a while ago. When we say concept, ito yung, for example, yung main definiendum. Na definiendum. Okay. Pag sinabi nating definiendum, sino-sino yung definiens? Naming the members, ibig sabihin, we try to name the members of the class. We try to name the list of objects that fall under the identified concept. Pero, if we try to remove the definiendum, the definiens can still be independent on its own. Okay, actor, wala siyang direct connection or direct relationship with the definiendum. Compared if we're going to discuss subclass later, number 3, yung definiens natin is closely linked with the superclass. Yung superclass, ito yung pinagmulan na kung saan directly connected yung subclass. The subclass here is subclass B, subclass C, subclass D, and then another subclass is subclass E. Subclass of the subclass D. Alright? Let's go to number 2 first. Okay, again, when we have definiens, it's not the definiens identified here can be independent, and then they don't have a close connection with the definiendum. Yun yung pinagkaiba ng enumerative with subclass definition. So another example, we have the definiendum na horror films. Horror films means 30 Days of Night and then The Ring. Okay, without the definiendum, the definiens are still independent. Okay, they can still exist on its own. Ibig sabihin, even without the definiendum, we can actually say that the 30 Days of Night, wala naman siyang closely connection hindi dito sa horror films, unlike sa subclass. Okay, tingnan natin yung subclass para medyo pwede natin i-compare. So what's a subclass? A subclass is classes that are derived from a superclass. So if we're going to check this illustration, ano ang superclass, ano yung subclass? Ang superclass refers to the class direct ancestors. So ito yung superclass na tinutukoy natin. Ito yung mga ancestors. An ancestor is any person. In this case, ang basic definition for the ancestor is any person from whom one is descended. So we have an ancestor, we have a descendant. Kung titingnan natin dito sa enumeration, the actor is not your ancestor. If we're going to refer that to the actors identified, like Long Mejia and then Brad Pitt. Ito si Long Mejia at si Brad Pitt. Hindi sila yung, the actor is not the ascendant of Long Mejia and then Brad Pitt. And then si Brad Pitt tsaka si Long Mejia, they are not the descendant of the actor. Gandun din naman sa horror tsaka sa 30 Days of Night tsaka sa The Ring. So in other words, if we're talking about subclass definition, we're talking about descendants and then ascendants. Okay, yung superclass is the ascendant, and then the subclass is the descendant. Alright? Sige, subclass definition tayo. Example tayo. Definitions by subclass. Here is naming the subclasses of the superclass. So example here is the superclass, the tree. May closely connection ba yung pine tree, oak tree, elm tree, spruce tree, and maple tree with the idea of the tree? Yes. The tree is the ascendant, and then the descendants are your oak, pine, elm, spruce. But this is partial kasi hindi niya pa na-identify yung lahat ng tree dito sa definiendum. Compared dito sa complete. For cetacean, it means either a whale, a dolphin, or a porpoise. So complete siya kasi ang cetacean only has 3 subclasses. The whale, the dolphin, and then the porpoise. Okay, same thing with the flower. It means rose, lily, daisy, geranium, zinnia, and the like. It's still partial kasi hindi pa nabigay lahat ng definitions for the flower. Hindi pa na-identify lahat ng subclasses for the flower. So the rose is directly a descendant of the flower. They are closely connected. Okay, so if I say flower, lahat ng attributes of a flower dapat nandito sa mga definitions niya. So that's the difference between subclass and then enumeration. So again, we only have 3 types of extensional denotative definitions. we have demonstrative, yung pinaka-primitive, and then enumerative, we have individual naming, and then we have subclass, yung ascendants, and then descendants, and then you have your superclass. And now let's go to your intentional connotative definitions. We only have 4. Simulan natin sa synonymous. For synonymous, ang keyword natin dito is we try to provide a definience for the definiendum, pero yung definience natin is only one in which the definience is a single word that connotes the same attributes as the definiendum. That's synonymous. So when we say synonymous, it has a similar meaning, equivalent in significance. Okay, that's the meaning of synonymous. Example tayo. Example, physician means what? Physician means doctor. So a doctor, parang ano to eh. This is the problem about lexical definition. Ang lexical definition, in order for, should follow a certain rule. Which rule is that? It's the rule about circularity. So the synonymous definition cannot fit the lexical definition. Next, intentional means willful. Voracious means ravenous. Observe means see. So that's synonymous definition. That's the first type. Next is etymological. Ang etymological, ang keyword natin dito is ancestry, o yung history of the word. Saan nanggaling? When we say saan nanggaling, it refers to your old languages, like Latin. Okay? License is a contemporary word, English contemporary word, pero it was derived, it has its roots from the Latin verb licere. Licere means permitted. So license is derived from the Latin verb licere, which means to be permitted. So etymology or etymological, the study of the history of words. Andun yung ancestry. Ang history natin dito is Latin, lumang language. It tries to examine when they enter the language, from what source. It could either be Latin, Greek, or kung anong lumang language, and how their form and meaning have changed over time. That's etymology. Another example, the English word captain derives from the Latin noun caput. So what's the meaning of caput in Latin? It means head. So closely connected yung ibig sabihin ng captain and then the caput. Kasi if you're a captain of the ship, it means you're the head of the ship. Ganun din. Licere means permitted. If you have a license to drive, it means you are allowed and permitted to drive. So merong synonymous na pagkakaparehas. Pero in contrast with synonymous, ang etymological, pinapakita niya yung lumang language. The English word efficient derives from the Latin verb efficere, which means to bring about. So ibig sabihin, kung efficient ka, nakapag-produce ka ng a certain output. Next, operational definition. Ang keyword natin for operational definition, it's all about how. So when we say how, definiens prescribes an operation. So ibig sabihin, it demands a certain action. Yung definiens, kailangan mong may gagawin kang action. Otherwise, kung wala kang makikitang action dito to justify the definiendum, it's not operational definition. So definiens prescribes an operation or action to be performed to prove something. So meron tayong kailangang operation, meron tayong kailangang action in order for us to prove something that would justify the definiendum. Example, one substance is harder than another if we are going to perform a certain action. And then what is that action? The action is this one. If only if one scratches the other when the two are rubbed together. So ibig sabihin, the scratch and then rub together are action and operational words. Otherwise, if you will not put definiens here, it is very hard to prove that one substance is harder than the other. Okay, next example tayo. A subject has brain activity if and only if an electroencephalograph shows oscillations. Ibig sabihin, may gumagalaw. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng oscillations when attached to the subject's head. Otherwise, kung wala kang makikitang oscillations, walang brain activity. A solution is an acid if and only if litmus paper turns, yun yung action, ito yung litmus paper, turns red, the paper is turned to red when dip into it. So ibig sabihin, pag itong blue paper and naging red, meaning to say, the solution that we put here in the paper is acid. Okay, so ibig sabihin in the definitions, makikita natin na meron tayong action na ginagawa to prove something and to justify the essence of the definiendum. Next, definition by genus and difference. So in this case, the difference of genus and difference dun sa subclass na minention natin kanina is the specific difference. Okay, tingnan natin dito. Genus means larger class and species means smaller subclass. So meron tayong subclass na tinutukoy dito. Pero with the species, we try to provide the specific difference. Okay, yun yung pinagkaiba ng genus and difference with subclass. Okay, example, general, ang genus is a general idea. So genus is an animal. Pag smaller or specific idea of the animal, species, mammal. So ano-ano bang mga species that fall under animal, hindi lang mammal. So marami yan. So ang mammal pwede rin maging genus kasi may species din ng mammal. We have the feline. Ganon din ang genus na feline. We have species for the feline. Tiger. Okay, tingnan natin dito. Kunin lang natin tong genus tsaka species para ma-apply natin tong specific difference. If we consider genus feline, it has 37 species, one of which is the tiger. So ano-ano mga species na it could be the puma, the jaguar, the lion, and then the domestic cat. So ang binigay lang natin dito is the tiger. Assuming I've included here puma, jaguar, lion, and then domestic cat. What is the specific difference of the tiger with the other species? Ang specific difference ng tiger with the other species like the domestic cat, the puma, the jaguar, the lion, and then domestic cat, ang pinagkaiba nila is we need to specify them. And then what are those? This includes being large, strip, ferocious, and so on. Pero ang pinagkaiba lang naman ng tiger, specific difference of the tiger with other species of the same class is yung stripes niya. Na makikita kang stripe. Well, pwede rin naman magkaroon ng stripe yung domestic cat, pero mas malaki na ang tiger. So if you try to indicate those attributes, we are talking about specific difference. Okay? So ang tiger pwede rin maging genus, pero may species din ng pagiging tiger like Bengal tiger at kung ano-ano pang tiger. Alright? That's specific difference. Now let's have a recap. Summary na to for the definitional techniques. Again, for extensional denotative definition, we only have 3. Demonstrative, enumerative, at saka definition by subclass. Sa ostensive, it's primitive, non-linguistic to. And tinuturo mo lang using your body language. Enumerative, ibig sabihin nito, the definitions is not directly connected with the definiendum. Ang pinagkaiba ng definition with the subclass is the subclass we're talking about ascendant and then descendant. Directly connected sila. You cannot remove one without the other. So, ibig sabihin closely connected sila. For the definition ng enumeration, if you remove the definiendum, for example, yung actor, si Brad Pitt magiging Brad Pitt pa rin. Even without the definiendum na actor. Ibig sabihin, they can exist independently, the definients. Next tayo. Intentional connotative definition. We're talking about connotation. If we're talking about connotation, we're talking about qualities and then attributes of the denotation. We only have 4. Synonymous, etymological, operational, and then definition by genus and then difference. So synonymous, we only have 1. Definients, yun yung keyword natin. For etymological, we're talking about the root cause or the history, yung pinanggalingan nung definiendum. So, ang etymological, ang definients natin dito, yung mga lumang language like Latin, Greek, at kung ano pang mga lumang language. For operational definition, ang titingnan natin dito is the definitions. Definitions requires to have an action description to prove the operation of the definiendum. Ulitin ko, yung definitions natin under operational definition should have a certain action. It requires a certain action or operation to prove and justify the definiendum. Okay, so ibig sabihin, pwede dito yung science. Hindi lang naman science, basta it requires a certain action to prove something. Okay, last is genus and difference. So the difference between genus and difference with subclass is genus, we have species here, and then the species here is connected with the specific difference. Dito sa subclass, pinapakita lang yung correlation ng subclass with the superclass. Dito may mga pinapakita kang list of species for you to identify the specific difference of one species with the other species. Ang example na binigay natin dito is the tiger. Pinagkaiba ng tiger na species with other species. Paano mo masasabi na magkaiba ang tiger with other species? We try to indicate the specific difference. Alright? So, I think that would be the last slide for this lecture. Again, thank you for listening and good luck on your quiz.